kick things off, yes, this is official, and no, I'm not joking with ya. The Nintendo Switch emulator on PC and Android, Yuzu, is officially dead.
So their GitHub is closed,
and on top
their
of
website
that,
is
the
down,
Nintendo
their source
3DS
code is
and
The settlement is pending a judge's approval. Specifically, Nintendo
Here's
said
the
more than
official
1 million
statement.
people
Because
played it.
Nintendo's legal argument rests
Nintendo has not taken any legal action against Dolphin Emulator or Valve. What actually happened was that Valve's legal department contacted Nintendo to inquire about the announcement.
It's been rough out here lately. Nintendo has been very strict about only allowing us to play games the way that they want us to play them. They're also not very good at making their older titles available. Beloved titles that are so easily available on the internet, it would be so easy for them to make available, but they just don't. So many people hear the word emulation and they immediately associate it with piracy. And that's understandable because it's so much easier to download a game than it would be to just rip it yourself. But the benefits that emulation provides are vast, archiving games that would otherwise be lost to time or unavailable, circumventing hardware restrictions that make playing games with modern technology nearly impossible, modifying games to breathe some new life into them. Physical games often require digital downloads that rely on a company's servers that just won't be around forever. The fact of the matter is, if I own a game, I should be able to do whatever the f I want with it. It's my property, I already gave you my money. What companies like Nintendo and Ubisoft and Apple and even John Deere want is to take that ownership away from you. The EU has honestly been extremely progressive about this. America has a bit of a ways to go. If Nintendo had their way, cops would be busting in my door just for changing out the battery of my Pokemon Blue cartridge. Their own website claims that games are not software and shouldn't be held to the same backup/archival exception under the Digital Millennium Copyright Act. This is not recognized by law. This is just what Nintendo believes. And this is dangerous because they have the money and the power to get their way. There is a little bit of truth to this, however, because due to copyright laws, each creative element of a game is protected separately according to its specific nature, like the music and the art, etc. Nintendo is also protected by their end user license agreement, which prohibits modifying or copying your software. Software! They call it software there. The enforceability of EULAs is still kind of up in the air. There is case law that determined that EULAs are enforceable, but it could be argued that any provision restricting archiving software might be a direct contradiction of the Digital Millennium Copyright Act. Right now, the only thing making backing up your games illegal is that a big company can come around and sue you, and because they have more money than you, there's nothing you can do about it. You will just lose. This is starting to sound like legal advice. This is not legal advice. Obviously, I'm not a lawyer. This is just like a warning that we don't have sufficient protection to do what we want with our property. Emulation does not have to equal Hey, man. Hey, I'm over here. Are you okay? Everything fine? Are you good?
Oh, beans. Is it lunchtime yet?
Lunchtime? Is it even lunch? It's like 5 o'clock. Wait, you didn't eat before you came here?
I thought I was supposed to fast before this.
What?
Oh, wait, that was my colonoscopy. Am I supposed to be on my colonoscopy?
No.
Camera's a little big.
No, come on. We'll go get you some Factor. Come on, let's go. This video is sponsored by Factor. Factor's fresh, never frozen meals are ready in just 2 minutes, so all you have to do is heat and enjoy. Skip the grocery store's prep work and cooking fatigue. Instead, get chef-curated, dietitian-approved meals delivered right to your door. And they've got smoothies and juices and wellness shots. Sometimes my employees legitimately forget to eat. So it's good to have some Factor around to keep them nice and healthy and focused. You can pop it in the microwave if you're in a real hurry, or you can throw it in the oven for around 7 minutes like what I do. And you can try it for yourself over at factor75.com or use the link below and use code YOUHUNGRY50 for a whole 50% off your first Factor box and free wellness shots for life with any active subscription. You can eat the food. Oh, thank you. Is there anything else you need me to tell you?
Yeah, can I go to the bathroom?
Yes.
Oh, thank God.
Oh, thank God. This video is to serve as sort of a call to arms. This is what we need to be careful of as a community and what we need to do to ensure a safer path forward for emulation. Just stop downloading the games. Just stop downloading them. This is, of course, based on my understanding of emulation and my amateur research of some legal nonsense. DMCA is usually a scary term for us YouTubers, but here it's actually helpful. Under the DMCA, nonprofit libraries, archives, and educational institutions are protected. It doesn't specifically call out individuals, which I think is a problem. But copyright.gov does say that archival and backup are terms used interchangeably today. Reverse engineering is protected. And thanks to Sony versus Connectix, copying a copyrighted BIOS during the development of an emulator does not constitute copyright infringement. What a really helpful case law that is. When these systems are no longer commercially available, there needs to be legal ways for us to continue to use the property that we own. Connecting old consoles to new TVs isn't exactly straightforward. End user license agreements prohibit aftermarket hardware to be connected to your console. So even just an HDMI adapter on your GameCube is a breach of their made up laws. Technology has a shelf life. You wouldn't keep valuable data on one old hard drive. No, you would back that data up onto something else. Old cartridges also have a shelf life. Old Pokemon cartridges have batteries that are keeping your childhood save files alive, and those batteries only last somewhere between 10 and 20 years. So they're all mostly dead by now. Changing the battery out is easy, but removing the battery will delete your save file. The only way to change the battery out without wiping your save is backing it up. And the only way to do this is with a third-party cart ripper. There are a few for Game Boy and Game Boy Advance. The Epilogue GB operator is, I think, the best one right now. It connects to your computer, which makes its UI super easy to use, and it even has a built-in emulator, so you can play your cartridges right on your computer. I have a whole video on this. It makes backing up your Game Boy stuff a breeze. Emulation does not equal piracy. But just because you own a game doesn't mean you can just go download it off the internet. It doesn't give you that right. You can't go into a store and steal a Twix just because you have one at home. Hardware like the GB operator makes retro emulation easy, and most importantly, it makes you free of culpability. There's also the Save the Hero Builder's Cart Ripper that also does Game Boy games, but it also does every retro console you can think of. SNES, N64, all that. These systems also have save files that might need liberating. You can now take your old save and rip it to your computer or modern handheld emulator and continue your game on there. You can rip your original Mario 64 game and mod it to your heart's content. This is what America is all about. Imagine if you bought an old Mustang and you weren't allowed to work on it. I also have a video on that. It's a bit more useful if you want a sort of Swiss Army knife that can handle ripping most of your retro library. But then, from there, we get into disc-based consoles, and those are a nightmare. Tell me why I thought I'd be able to just plug in a Blu-ray drive and have things just copy over. There are a lot of homebrewed programs that try to solve this problem, but they all fail in their own fun ways. There's one really cool app called Media Preservation Frontend, which is the most promising out of all of them. Look, you can select from a laundry list of media types. The issue is that most of the media you would like to rip requires very specific hardware. Dreamcast games have 2 layers to them and require a special type of disk drive, and you need to fucking take the disk out while the drive is still spinning and trick it into thinking it's an audio CD or some. Pretty much all of these systems, including GameCube and Wii, require you to have a specific type of disk drive. And most, if not all of them, are old IDE drives. Some of you will be too young to remember IDE. Why hasn't anyone developed a sort of hybrid of all of these drives just for ripping these retro games? Seems like a huge hole in the market that would drastically aid our efforts in the emulation community. Using Free Dump, they all have such creative names. This is one of the litany of programs that was designed to rip GameCube games to your computer. Using Free Dump, I was able to do something. It took 12 hours to rip 1080 Avalanche, and at the end, I had an 8 gigabyte file that was completely unusable. You pretty much have to hack your Wii to rip GameCube and Wii games, which is surprisingly easy to do. I used wii.hacks.guide/modme, And it was very straightforward. All you really need is a PC and a FAT32 formatted 32GB or less SD card. There's a lot you can do with a hacked Wii. Maybe I'll make a video on it in the future. But for now, the only reason I'm doing this is just so we can rip our games. It's significantly faster to rip using a Wii, and I used Clean Rip. My 1080 Avalanche game that previously took 12 hours took just 20 minutes on here. It ended with an error, but it worked anyway? The program has to rip it raw, so it gave me a 1.25GB file, but Dolphin, the emulator on PC, has a way to compress it. I feel like we can compress it more than this somehow, but I can live with 880 megabytes, that's fine. I'll take the extra hit to my storage to have a nice, authentic ROM. Using this method, we can do Wii games. My Wii Sports said it was fine, but gave me an unusable ROM, and Twilight Princess ripped fine, but was also a massive file that I had to compress. In total, I ripped about 6 games, and about half of them produced usable files. I think the problem is, if the disc has any sort of scratches on it at all, it makes it difficult to rip. This entire process is extremely convoluted. You might be saying to yourself, why would I put myself through this when I can just download it off the internet? That's the point, that's the whole point of this whole video. The easiest way to prevent piracy is just make things available. A solution to this convoluted archival problem would curb piracy. We either need a way to back up our physical media or for companies to just make their legacy library available. If I wanted to buy Super Mario Sunshine and play it on a modern TV, I'm gonna have to spend $125 for that. Everyone likes to point to these studies that show that people who pirate media the most are also the most likely to spend the most money on media. How many times have I bought Sonic Adventure 2? I'd also like the ROM for that, please. Thank you very much. Should we even talk about Nintendo Switch? I mean, that's kind of why we're here, isn't it? Nintendo shut down the most popular Nintendo Switch emulator, Yuzu. I can't say I'm surprised. And I've expressed in previous videos that I feel weird about emulating certain games on Yuzu and showing it in a video because I know what a lot of you people are doing out there. It's understandable why Nintendo wouldn't want Yuzu around. The whole takedown seems to be fueled by the Tears of the Kingdom release catastrophe. So many people were playing that game before launch because it leaked online and it was so easy to play through Yuzu. Some even opted to just play it that way because it ran better in Yuzu than it did on a Switch. This put a huge damper on Nintendo's launch, and they wanted to fight back. One of the big things that Nintendo caught them on was their Patreon funds. They were making somewhere between $30,000 and $40,000 per month. If you're running any sort of emulator, get rid of the Patreon, man. What the hell are you trying to do? That's what got Point Crow in trouble too. He paid a mod creator to build his mod. Use this case as a warning. Don't get into this hobby for money. Earlier, I did say that someone should make a piece of hardware that rips CDs. Obviously, that would require a sale. Selling licensed hardware can be a bit tricky. Some have gotten away with it. Famously, Game Genie and Game Shark were able to function completely unlicensed. And not so famously, Prom Blaster. Remember her? P-ROM Blaster was a cart ripper for Atari that was ordered to stop sales because game cartridges as media are not particularly subject to mechanical or electrical failure. Making an archival copy of a game cartridge constituted copyright infringement. I guess 40 years later, they didn't expect a 34-year-old man to want to continue dumping those ROMs. This was in 1983 and predates the protections set by the DMCA. And I think that my example of the Pokemon cartridges proves that things can and will eventually fail. They didn't have the foresight back then. Have you ever had to blow into an NES cartridge? How many blows do they have left? Ever think about that? I think about it like every day. But laws can change. And even case laws set by previous cases can change. Just like how Atari won their backup case, but then DMCA allows for archival backups, things could just swing back the other way too. There's no fun conclusion. There's not much working in our favor here. And not much good news on the horizon either. The best we have is the right to repair, which doesn't seem too concerned with games. It's made some great headway with cars and tractors, but we're living in a world where digital media is about to be our only choice soon. We're gonna need some sort of protections. Game companies can currently just rip games right out of our local drives. They can also throw lawsuits all willy-nilly to block us from playing our old games on modern hardware. I love all of the modding work that homebrew devs have been doing for decades now. We're barreling towards a world where that might all be taken away from us. I could go on here. I didn't even talk about the DS and 3DS. It's very easy to rip those games, but you do need a hacked 3DS, which is very easy to do. I also have a video on that. I'm really just here because I want to take the focus of emulation away from piracy and bring it back to archiving and modifying the games that you already own. I've made videos about this in the past, and honestly, people don't seem to be too interested in them because, again, it's just so convoluted. And it would be so much easier to just press the download button. I just don't want to see more takedowns of the stuff that I love. These big companies will have much less legal standing if we're acquiring our ROMs legally and not distributing them nefariously. Nefariously? Plus, I've got a huge collection that needs archiving, and I don't think it needs to be this hard. Anyway, what do you guys think in there? Hi, about emulation and piracy and all of these big scary takedowns that are going on. Wouldn't it be great if we had a better solution for backing up all of the stuff that we have and have some sort of protections out there so that we can take software and modify it to our heart's content as long as it's not hurting anybody? I didn't get too deep into mods, which is another one of my big concerns. When you look at the Kaizo stuff and the old Super Mario World ROM hacks and stuff, and even in the Point Crow situation with Breath of the Wild mods, you need the ROM. They're not distributing the ROM to you. You are downloading this app that changes the ROM for you. So you still need to provide the intellectual property in your own way using one of the methods that I showed. It's when people are making money by doing those mods where it becomes an issue. I also didn't talk about archiving Nintendo Switch games because, again, most of those games are commercially available still. Currently, you need to hack a Switch. That seems like a huge pain in the ass, but there's that MIG Switch that should be arriving at my door any minute now. So we'll be talking about that in a future video. Leave in the comments below, add me on Twitter, all of this other social media garbage. We got streams over on twitch.tv/wolfden. You can hang out and talk in there. I usually work on videos there. Would you focus on my face, please? Thank you. Jesus. Got a guy operating the camera today. He's doing a dog job. You're fired. Go away. Of course, the most important thing you can do is just subscribe and share this video with a friend. A friend who would like to get into emulation, but is a little bit scared, or is a little too into emulation. Thank you very much. Have yourself a good week. I'll be over here sulking again.